Siekierą można zbudować dom i można zabić człowieka. I myślę, że podobnie jest z różnymi instrumentami, które proponuje nam się w procesie zwiększania partycypacji społecznej. Niedawno Hanna podesłała taki ciekawy link z Poznania, gdzie otworzono proces konsultacji społecznych. Pan prezydent świetnie rozmawia ze społeczeństwem, tylko że podjął tę decyzję, kiedy już wszystko, co najważniejsze, zostało zrobione. To znaczy zadłużono miasto na kilkaset milionów złotych, budując 2 wodotryski w postaci jednego stadionu i jednego jakiegoś ośrodka spa, bo to jest oczywiście najważniejsze, prawda? Spa i stadiony. A następnie powiedziano, no społeczeństwo teraz musi się włączyć, bo mamy problem. Miasto leży, miasto jest bankrutem albo jest bliskie bankructwu, w związku z tym musimy się zastanowić, gdzie ciąć. I teraz zastanówmy się wspólnie, gdzie będziemy ciąć. Tak? To jest ten poziom arogancji, proszę Państwa, w Poznaniu. Poznań moim zdaniem jest jednym z tych wyjątkowych miast, gdzie jednak grupy społeczne są już dość mocne. Bo tu też można miasta jakby, proszę spojrzeć na przykład. Epatuje się nas codziennie, polityka, czy lewicowa, czy prawicowa prasa epatuje nas na przykład PKB, że to miasto ma wyższe PKB, to ma niższe. Czy ktoś kiedyś widział mapę społecznej aktywności miasta? Ja sam byłem autorem, współautorem tutaj z Małgorzatą Tkaczyani, moją koleżanką, takiego raportu Zrównoważony rozwój metropolii Silesia. Proszę Państwa, było tam 35 map. Tam były i ośrodki sportu, i ośrodki jakieś tam, przepraszam, historyczne, i ośrodki przemysłowe, ale nie było mapy społecznej. Nie było na przykład tego, że na Śląsku, co jest absolutną prawdą, na Śląsku są tysiące, jeśli nie setki tysięcy organizacji społecznych, które są aktywne. I co jest istotne, ja bym powiedział, że Śląsk jest zagłębiem obywatelskim. A mówi się ciągle o węglu na Śląsku, że jest zagłębiem węglowym. Adam mnie już tu ścina i słusznie, więc bez wiedzy. Zatem to my, obywatelki i obywatele, tyle wyrwiemy, niestety, tak to wygląda, to jest wojna. To jest wojna o zasoby różnego rodzaju, o przestrzeń, o czystą wodę, o słońce. Ostatnio wymyśliłem, że korporacje zasłonią nam słońce, żebyśmy nie mogli sami sobie paneli słonecznych na dachach dawać, żeby byli pomiędzy nami a słońcem, bo można tę energię skomercjalizować. To oczywiście taki trochę absurdalny pomysł, ale kto wie, czy za 100 lat nie będziemy mieli takich odsłanianych, zasłanianych korporacyjnych elektrowni w powietrzu, które będą dystrybuowały energię słoneczną, o którą tak walczymy. Zatem no, nikt za nas tego nie zrobi. Znaczy tutaj nie przyjedzie jakiś na białym koniu demokratyczny panicz czy panienka, czy panniczka. Nie chciałem nikogo urazić. Nikt tu nie przyjedzie, żeby nas wyzwolić. My po prostu musimy same o demokrację w Polsce powalczyć. Inicjatywa Europejska jest jednym z narzędzi, natomiast na pewno nie jest to narzędzie, które zupełnie nas wyrwie z okowów różnego typu niewoli.
Dziękuję wszystkim za udział w dyskusji i
dyscyplinę.
Tak, dyscyplinę dyskusji, a dziękuję również tłumaczom i proszę o gorące brawa za tłumaczenie.
Jeszcze sekunda. Zapraszam serdecznie na poczęstunek teraz. Proszę się wzmocnić, z pełną energią wrócić do jego panelu i serdecznie jeszcze podziękowania dla Adama Suskiego, który ukierunkowywał naszą dyskusję. Tak, zajęcie miejsc. Zaczynamy więc drugą część naszej konferencji. Mam nadzieję, że wzmocnieni po przerwie z werwą zaczniemy debatę, tym razem już bardziej szczegółowo o mechanizmach Europejskiej Inicjatywy Obywatelskiej. Jak Państwo wiedzą z programu, Daniela Graf z naszej partnerskiej fundacji Green European Foundation niestety nie mogła przyjechać, żeby moderować drugą część konferencji, natomiast Hanna Piotrek była tak uprzejma, że przejmie funkcję Danieli Graf, za co serdecznie dziękuję i oddaję głos. Po raz kolejny proszę, żeby dostosować tempo wypowiedzi do i tak bardzo wyczerpującej pracy naszej tłumaczki. Tak więc dziękuję uprzejmie i życzę owocnych debat.
W takim razie ja powiem krótko, rozpoczynamy drugą część naszej konferencji. O ile pierwsza dotyczyła bardziej Europejskiej Inicjatywy Obywatelskiej w kontekście demokracji, o tyle druga będzie dotyczyła już konkretnych przypadków i omówienia Europejskiej Inicjatywy Obywatelskiej jako narzędzia. W panelu będziemy mieli najpierw prezentację pana Bruno Kaufmana, który przedstawi nam Europejską Inicjatywę Obywatelską bliżej, przybliży jej mechanizmy, ewentualnie opowie o dobrych stronach, ewentualnie powie, czego nie udało się zrobić i jakie są zagrożenia płynące z tego właśnie, że niektóre rzeczy zrobić się nie udało. Drugim wystąpieniem będzie Małgorzata Tkaczyk, która powie o małej i dużej inicjatywie. Również odniesie się bardzo krótko do kwestii referendów i opowie nam też o sprawach kobiecych w kontekście EIO. I trzecią prezentacją będzie prezentacja Joanny Miś z Greenpeace'u, która opowie o bardzo konkretnym przypadku Europejskiej Inicjatywy Obywatelskiej, czyli o moratorium na produkty GMO. Przekazuję w tej chwili mikrofon panu Bruno Kaufmanowi.
Thank you very much. I didn't stand up. I have been sitting all morning in trains and airplanes, so I feel it's better to stand a little bit. And I would like to share with you a little bit the background and the idea of the European Citizen Initiative. Don't too fast. Who is in charge of Jacob? You, okay. So you can go back to the first. I will give you the sign. Okay. So I'm myself. Since the beginning of this year, I'm a Green City Councillor in a city in the north of Sweden called Falun. But my background is as a political scientist and as a journalist. I have followed many of the democratization movements in Europe and also worldwide. And since 10 years ago, I'm the head of an institute called Initiative and Referendum Institute, which is basically a think tank related to the forms of modern direct democracy. And of course, when you study direct democracy, it's always, again, that you also learn about the Polish contributions, the thinkers from Poland, the ideas from Poland, and the fights from Poland. So I'm very happy to be here with you today, because I think you as a country, as a nation, have made many contributions towards the history of democracy. And also now, of course, becoming the President of the European Union in the second part of this year, Poland will be very important in preparing the use and the practice of the European Citizen Initiative. I'm also happy to see that the handbook we have produced with the Green European Foundation has been translated into Polish, so it's a little bit more accessible to also those who are not so able to maybe read this material in English. And looking out into the world, one has really to say that this European Citizen Initiative is a very timely instrument of participatory democracy at a time where many challenges, and now you can start. Yes. You will have to do a lot of work because but this looks a little bit dark, but okay. That we are at a point in our history where many of our democratic challenges are really, next please, are really not so much anymore nation-based or locally, but if you look into the question of the environmental challenges, question of the economy and the question of freedom, next please, which is really an issues which are transnational, which have to do with, for instance, our energy issues, transportation issues, which have to do with our food health. All these issues, the nation state alone cannot do anymore everything. And next, the economy, of course, as you know, the global economy has for a very long time left the local, regional and national level. So even there we have reached a global issue. And next, when we come to the freedom, as we can see in the Arab world, the idea of democracy is really, truly a global thing. But what we have the problem with is, of course, that our democratic systems are limited still very much to the local, regional and national level. Next, please. So looking out into the world, you can say that there is, in fact, the idea of democracy really have grown to most countries. This map just shows you a very few white areas where there is nothing of an ocean of democracy in the national constitutions. Most countries do have something. Next, please. But the problem of our democracies today are very often that it's too indirect. It's just limited to elections. Next. It's too national. It's limited to the nation state. And next. It's very much old-fashioned in its way of using it. So what we need is, of course, much more of a democracy which is more direct and more transnational and finally also more digital. So these three big challenges for our democracy, to be more direct, more transnational and digital, next please, the European Citizen Initiative in a very interesting way brings together. So in a way the European Citizen Initiative is a historic thing, which is a preview on the democracy for the 21st century. So before now going into this procedure as such, I want still a little bit to bridge maybe the discussion of this morning to the discussion of this afternoon when we are talking about modern democracy. A modern democracy is really something else than just an assembly, people coming together making decisions. It has to do with human rights, which protects ourselves. It has to do with a system of government which is representative, where we can get our accountability, and it has to do with a system of participation where direct democracy enters into the game. So, next please. When we talk about modern direct democracy, it's important to see that, of course, there are many different forms of participation, of having people involved, but basically it's also about popular vote procedures linked to elections, linked to initiatives, referendums, recalls and plebiscites. And you can also say modern direct democracy is not just about going to elect somebody else, it's about substantive issues. That's the big difference, you can say, between direct and indirect democracy. It's a popular vote procedure on a substantive issue. It can be an initiative, it can be a referendum, or even a plebiscite. Now, going through these different forms of initiatives and to, in a way, settle the framework for the European Citizen Initiative, it's important to say that the forms of plebiscite is maybe the most used process of popular voting. It's also the most problematic because it's a process which is controlled, for instance, by a government or a parliament or even a president. So it's a top-down process. But other processes, like the agenda initiatives, which leads to a parliamentary vote on an issue like you have here in Poland on the national level, or a citizen initiative which can lead to a popular vote, like for instance currently in Italy yesterday and today, or even optional referendums and mandatory referendums. These are processes based on the law or on the will of the citizen. So what we have now on the European level is not a citizen initiative in a way that it can lead to a popular vote, a referendum all over Europe. It's an agenda initiative. It's a possibility for a certain amount of the people to put an issue on the agenda of the European institutions. Next, please. And this has been settled. This has been really settled through this Lisbon Treaty, which in an interesting way, also in a way more clearly than many national constitutions do say that the democratic life of the European Union is based on a representative democracy equally based on indirect and direct democratic forms, which means you have elections, but you should also have some forms of direct democratic measure, and this is set out as a principle in the European Treaty. And this principle leads now the discussion not so much to the issue if we should have direct democracy on the European level, but how this European direct democracy should look like. And the procedural issues, which are always very important, because you have many constitutions all over the world which are saying popular power is there, all power goes from the people, but then when it comes to the procedure, there are so many thresholds, there are so many hurdles, there are so many problems, so the people cannot really exercise that. So the procedural struggle, which has been going on for about 2 years since the Lisbon Treaty was put into force, has been very important for the success, for the potential success of the European Citizen Initiative. And the Parliament, the Council and the Commission and also civil society has been very much active and involved in that. And I have to say that I have been also for more than 20 years involved in this struggle for the European Citizen Initiative, and in that way this procedural final solution which have been agreed in December last year, and the procedure, the regulation of the European Citizen Initiative have been put into force on April 1 this year. This has been an important step. So the principle is there, procedure is there, and now it will be about practice. And there, this type of work, this type of events, this type of workshops we will also do tomorrow, of course, is the starting point for a practice, good practice, useful practice, constructive practice of this European Citizen Initiative. Because it's of course about knowing that there is this right, but also knowing how we can use it, and maybe for what we cannot use. So the practical issue, that will be now, let's say, the decisive element of the work around the European Citizen Initiative in the years to come. And this European Citizen Initiative handbook, which you have got, is one contribution to that. Of course, there are many other approaches to that, but it gives you a little bit of a background, the context, and also shows which are the limits of this new instrument. What we have described in this book is basically a 10-step model. Which steps you have to consider when you want to do such an initiative. And because it's all about bridging the gap, you can say, between citizens on one side and the European institutions and the European Union on the other side. Because that's one of the biggest challenges, as I have described in the beginning, that we are entering a time in our world where more and more issues are not anymore just limited to local, regional and national levels, but also transnational. But most people have no idea or don't see any option how they could be involved as citizens on this transnational level. So what's important when you go into this instrument of the European Citizen Initiative is to get an idea about time, about how much time do you have to invest in order to approach this instrument. It's not a quick fix or a fast track or an instant way of being, for instance, against something. It's much more an instrument in favor of something. It's a proactive, activating instrument, much more than just an instrument of protest, of being complaining something. And that's a little bit our problem of most democracies today, that they are basically offering to the people ways of complaining, petitioning, of being against, and to say this is something we don't like. But there are very little instruments today in our democracies which give us, the people, the right to be proactively proposing solutions to common problems. So, in a way, the first phase, which is not limited to a certain time of amount, will be for all those who want to use this instrument that they have an idea which type of problem do they want to approach and which type of solution do they want to have. Because very often when you discuss this type of instruments, you know the problem, and most people will say this is a problem, for instance, bad food security as we have now with the EEC bacteria, just seeing that this is a problem. But there is very hard ways to find out which would be the solution to avoid this type of problems for the future. So we need an idea about what we want to propose with a European Citizen Initiative. Secondly, it will be very important to know which type of instrument is this, because many people maybe would think that this is an instrument where you can create something like a pan-European referendum. It isn't. You may think that you can propose whatever you want. You can't. You have to know which type of instrument for which type of solution in which framework this will be. Thirdly, it will also be very important, and tomorrow we will work through all these steps very precisely. It will also be important to know which type of goal we will have with such a campaign, because it will take several years of your life, basically, to do a European Citizen Initiative. It will require a lot of resources, time resources, financial resources to do it. So you have to know a little bit which type of goal do you want to achieve with it. Is it something that you want to promote your organization, your political party, or your region? In which way do you want to use this instrument? Because this is an important thing, not to be frustrated in the end. And fourthly, of course, it will be very much the question, how can we use this instrument practically in a way, how do we have to design such a European Citizen Initiative? Because it will be the clearness and the understandability of the design of the initiative which will make the difference, which will make that this initiative can be a communicative tool. Because we have always to think, what is the main purpose of this European Citizen Initiative is to create communication, dialogue. It's an instrument of collective learning. So we can propose a solution to a problem and we are able to convince others about that. That's the whole thing with this European Citizen Initiatives. And it's something which is not just limited to those with a lot of money, but basically a right for everybody in Europe. So that's this first phase. And then when you go into the second phase, when you go into the formal process, there will be certain time limits. So phase 2 will be about that you have to register this initiative on the website provided by the European Commission. This website will be available from later this year.